I'm Deontay Jenkins, and here's what's on my mind. You know, I've gotten into several arguments over my lifetime about the difference between story and plot, most of which ending in them saying there is no difference and I'm just a pretentious writer. To which I say, yeah, a little. And then I realized the problem was that I was talking to people that didn't write. Look, to a regular person, it doesn't really matter what's the difference between a plot and a story. They don't see it as separate things, they see it as one whole. But to a writer, knowing the difference between story and plot makes all the difference between making something mediocre and making something that's really good. So, when someone says there is no difference between story and plot, they're dead wrong. If I could visualize a story, it would be this: a clear line from beginning to end. And if I could visualize a plot, it would be this. And even though to the general audience the difference between a story and plot makes no difference, to a writer, a filmmaker, or any kind of storyteller, it makes all the difference in the world. So let me make it clear once and for all the difference between a story and a plot. And let's start with the more important part, the story. Story covers the who, the what, and the where. It's as simple as that. The story covers who the characters are, what's happening to them, and where it's taking place. Generally speaking, you can find the story for a book or a movie in the logline. For instance, Kill Bill. A former assassin known simply as the Bride wakes up from a coma 4 years after her jealous ex-lover attempts to murder her on her wedding day. Fueled by an insatiable desire for revenge, he vows to get even with every person who contributed to the loss of her unborn child, her entire wedding party, and 4 years of her life. It's really that simple. I'll give you another one. The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. A bounty hunting scam joins two men in an uneasy alliance against a third in a race to find a fortune in gold buried in a remote cemetery. That is the entire story. The entire story told in one sentence, no less. I'll give you one more. West Side Story. Two youngsters from rival New York City gangs fall in love, but tensions between their respective friends builds towards tragedy. Who? Two youngsters. What? They fall in love. Where? New York City. That is the story. So if you ever need to know what your story is or any other story is, it's in the logline. It covers the basic aspects of the story without going into the small details, because that, my friends, is where the plot is. Now, plot covers the how, the when, and the why. Again, simple, right? Plot is how the story is delivered within a book or a screenplay or a movie or whatever. Again, it's how the story is delivered within the medium. See, you can't have a plot without a story, but you can have a story without a plot. It's how the characters are confronted with the conflicts that are thrown at them. It's when the story takes place in the characters' lives. It's why the characters are confronted with certain conflicts and why they react the way they do. In the case of Jaws, for instance, we know the general story. When a killer shark unleashes chaos on a beach community, a local sheriff, a marine biologist, and an old seafarer must hunt the beast down and kill it before it kills again. But the plot gives us way more detail. On Amity Island, a young woman disappears after a late night skinny dip. When her partial body washes up on shore the next morning, Police Chief Brody is certain it's a shark attack and orders the beach to be closed. Concerned more about the town's economy than public safety, the medical examiner and the mayor pass it off as a boating accident, and the beaches are reopened 24 hours later. The mayor insists that they remain open during the 4th of July weekend, which is the busiest weekend of the year for them. When a young boy becomes the second victim, his grieving mother offers a reward to anyone who catches and kills the shark. Chief Brody calls in an oceanographer, Matt Hooper, who examines the remains of the victim and surmises that he was killed by a large shark. Meanwhile, several bounty hunters catch a tiger shark, and the town's officials are satisfied, but Hooper is skeptical. Now, without going any further and ruining the ending, that's what happens in Jaws. And you can see how much more detail the plot gives versus the story. That being said, the story is still more important than the plot. Now, why would I say that when the plot gives you more detail? Well, a good story can't be changed. It just can't. If you change any element of it, it won't be the same thing. For instance, we talked about the good, the bad, and the ugly. If we took away the gold and replaced it with, say, pizza, it wouldn't be the same thing. We as an audience wouldn't feel as compelled. Why would they be risking life and limb going on this long journey just for some pizza? It doesn't make sense. Unless you're like really fucking hungry or something. But you can take elements from the plot, you can move them, change them, rearrange them in all different kinds of ways, and it'll still be good. But you don't believe me, do you? Alright, you twisted my arm, I prove it to you. A story can be the same and have two very different plots. Take, for instance, 1940's The Shop Around the Corner and its 1999 remake, You've Got Mail. Both are about two pen pals falling in love via their correspondence, but hating each other in real life, oblivious to each other's true identities. Neither of them realize the person that they loathe is the person that they love. In The Shop Around the Corner, it's based in Budapest, Hungary. Bachelor Alfred Kralik is the most experienced salesman in the store. When Clara Novak seeks a job position as a saleswoman in the store, their boss hires her, but she and Kralik do not get along at all. Kralik has an unknown pen pal that he's very dedicated to and intends to propose to very soon. However, without warning, he is fired on the night that he's going to meet up with his pen pal, no less. He goes to the bar where they've scheduled their meeting and discovers that it's Clara that he's been corresponding with. However, he's ashamed after being fired and realizing the relationship that they have in real life. He decides to not meet up with her. Eventually, their boss realizes the reasons that he fired Kralik were incorrect, so he hires him again, this time for the position of manager. Meanwhile, Clara is still fascinated with her correspondent and does not pay attention to Kralik at all, even though his attitude towards her has completely changed. Kralik works out a way to reveal himself to her after seeing her for her and not just her attitude. Now, in You've Got Mail, Joe Fox and Kathleen Kelly are business rivals and competitors. Kathleen runs a small family-owned bookstore called The Shop Around the Corner. It's a popular children's bookstore, and the people that work there are knowledgeable and kind. But just around the block, Fox is building a mega bookstore called Fox & Sons Books, and he's determined to wipe out any competition. Kathleen is optimistic in knowing her loyal customers will continue to come to her store, but her employees know that Fox's discounts and convenience will surely wipe them out of business. Joe and Kathleen meet for the first time in her bookstore, and then a second time in a social gathering, where she discovers who he is. They're immediately disgusted by one another, not because of appearance, but because of each other's attitudes. Joe is planning on wiping out her small family enterprise, and Joe just generally finds Kathleen snotty and kind of a bitch. But over email, the two of them are in love with each other. Just like in The Shop Around the Corner, they have been corresponding back and forth, not knowing each other's identity. Eventually, the two of them decide to meet, and Joe Fox discovers who Kathleen is. In a scene mirroring the one in The Shop Around the Corner, Joe realizes that his initial thoughts about Kathleen are completely wrong. And just like The Shop Around the Corner, Joe figures out a way to reveal himself to Kathleen, and they both eventually see past their initial judgments of each other and see deeper into who they actually are as people. You see, both of these have the exact same story because they're both based on the exact same play. But one is made for a 1940s audience and the other is made for a 1999 audience. They have completely different plot lines, but they're the exact same story. They're different plots tailored to their time, but the story is timeless. Look, knowing the difference between a story and the plot is vital to becoming a good storyteller. You have to craft an interesting story and fill it with compelling plot points in order to get through to your audience and keep them invested on what's going on. So next time someone tells you that there's no difference between a story and a plot, you tell them to kiss your ass because they're dead wrong. But then again, what do I know? Thanks again for watching, guys. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you thought it was any good. You can check out some of my other content here, including my short films and other videos that I have on storytelling, filmmaking, photography, all different types of things. Once again, I am Deontay Jenkins, and make sure you come back next time because I think you're pretty cool. Peace.